All right, so my name is Jessica Zarodnik. I'm the Indian Springs Middle School principal.
And I'm Tanya Roberts, and I'm the assistant principal.
And we are going to be interviewing Rosalie Hartley for a position, a behavior support position here at Indian Springs Middle School. Okay, so before we interview, let's go ahead and discuss her resume and some things that we think are important for this position and just in order to see if she's a good fit for our campus.
Sure,
Okay.
sure.
All right, so looking at her resume, it looks like she has been teaching for 25 years. 10 of those years have been in special education. Specifically, she has done behavior support with the autistic population. So students with autism is what her expertise is in. She used to work at Keller, but now recently moved over to Northwest ISD. It looks like her experience is with students 5th grade through 8th grade, so middle school. She has experience with transitioning the younger kids as well as the 8th graders into high school.
That's really a big benefit.
Yeah. And it looks like, so because she does have special education experience, I am interested to see what IEP program she's familiar with as far as like technology, writing IEPs.
That's a really good point, because several schools do all their reporting very differently, especially if they have to be in and out or service different groups. But showing that she was in Keller before, I would think that that might not be
True.
That might be a benefit.
Yeah, that's true. Also, just my experience with this position is the importance of documentation and
Huge part of their job.
working with the gen ed teachers and even the resource teachers in order to get progress information. And
we both know that's about 25 or even more % of their job.
Yeah,
is reporting.
And the difficulty previous teachers have had in getting that information in a timely manner, because as you know, IEPs have timelines.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, they do. It takes a special personality too to deal with the gen ed, because they have so many demands on them that all the extra paperwork kind of gets shuffled back. So maybe that would be a good question of asking, how do they communicate with the gen ed teachers?
For sure. I think that's one of the questions we'll have to look though, because that is a good question. All right, so what are we looking for? What do we think is going to be a good fit? Like, what are we hoping this person has? The person that we hire, what do you think?
Well, I think that we're looking for someone who definitely has more of an alpha personality, because if they're going to be in this core program, they're going to need to kind of take charge of not only the kids but the assistants who work with them. And they have to set some good boundaries with the gen ed on what information they need and when they need it. So you have to be good at communication as well.
Yep, that's a good point. You know, I think also being personable. So, you know, having that approachable demeanor, I think, is important. I think that tells a lot about a person, right?
Exactly.
That
if they're able to work
relate
with others.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the relationships. Sometimes you can pick up whether a person is good at forming relationships just by, you know, initial interactions.
True.
But so here, you know, at Indian Springs, you know, we do have a culture of inclusivity, of, you know, we want our kids to feel safe, we want them to feel valued. You know, so I think while we're asking these questions, I think we just need to try to pick up on what our current culture is and just see if we think that this person's a good fit for that.
Absolutely.
All right, so let's look at the questions really quick. And see if that one question especially was covered. I think it was working with the gen ed teachers. Let's see. So we'll start off by asking just questions about personality, about like, you know, why do you want to teach? Why do you like to teach? And then we'll get into more specific job-related questions. So we have general, personality, behavioral, and then we'll have job-specific questions. And let's see.
This is a very delicate position because, you know, while we're at Indian Springs, and we are very inclusive with all the staff, and it truly feels like family. So we definitely want somebody like that.
Mm-hmm.
For special needs kids, they need someone who's very structured and disciplined, just routine, you know? So I think that's probably, I don't know how to ask that kind of a question.
Yeah, I think there is one question about it's the top one here. Describe a time when you were faced with an organizational obstacle and how did you solve the problem?
Gotcha.
So we can kind of add to that a little bit, because you're right, they have to set a schedule for the, you know, we're gonna have 7 students in her program. So, I mean, she's gotta have structure, she's gotta set that schedule, she's gotta be able to manage the team of 3 that she's gonna have, including herself, to be able to support all those kids throughout the day. Exactly. So, with all the different grade levels that they're gonna be. So we've got that, and then I think at the top right over here is what you're talking about. This position requires cohesive staff. Yeah, tell me about a time when you had a difficult conversation with someone to avoid future issues. But I think there's also one that talks about goal progress, and collecting that from staff. Yeah, this one right here. All right, so that I think is going to be covered. And okay, anything else you can think of?
No, I know that, I mean, we'll definitely get a feel of this, but many times they're called to support other classrooms if there's an issue with a kid or anything, so we definitely want to make sure that they know that they could get pulled to help out.
True.
If there's a,
with another program, with our staff program.
Yeah, we have a good group now that do that, they just step in and help, but.
Yeah.
And hopefully we won't have that as often this year.
Yeah, you know, with the previous teacher in this position, it seemed that they were too quick to put a child in a hold. And so I think it's very important that the person that we hire has experience with de-escalation, that they have a lot of different strategies in order to get the get the child from that accelerated phase back to that calm, instead of accelerating into the peak, which is, you know, when they're harmful to themselves or to one another. Because we had way too many holds that we had to report, and I feel like there's better interventions. So I'd like to know if they already have, obviously this person, since she has behavioral support, she's probably already CPI trained and has the TBSI already taken care of.
I would imagine so.
However, you know, how a teacher puts that into practice, that's the kind of thing, I think we need to ask questions about that. Like, what de-escalation strategies? The student's doing this, how would you react?
Because we all know that when one tends to have a bad day, it's like a little virus, it goes around and everybody falls off. Kids with special needs definitely need the structure of predictability, what's going to come next. And that includes how you're going to react to certain things too. You know, they can't control much, so you want to give them the best opportunity to have some control.
Right.
Yeah. It definitely takes a special person to step into this role.
Yep. It does. It does.
I hope Miss Rosalie is it.
Me too. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and bring her in. You ready?
Yeah.
Okay. Mrs. Hartley?
Hi.
Hi. Come on in. Thank you for coming.
Nice to meet you. Thank you for inviting me. Hi.
I'm Tanya Roberts.
Rosalie Hartley. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
All right. Have a good drive over?
Yes.
Good. Good. Okay. Well, we have your resume, so thank you so much. Well, why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Okay. I I am a veteran teacher. I'm going into my 25th year of teaching.
Congratulations.
Thank you. The silver anniversary. Some of that time I've spent in Keller. Then I went to Northwest ISD, and I'm trying to get back into Keller. 10 of those years I've spent doing special ed, primarily helping our autistic population, and also working with our ELs because I speak Spanish. So that's a little bit about me.
25 years.
Mhm.
What brings you back to Keller?
I just love the way that Keller schools have that family atmosphere. I really like the cohesiveness and the support that from the top down you receive being in Keller.
Okay, well, walk us through your resume a little bit.
Sure. Alright, so starting way back when I started as a para in SPED. So doing that, I decided, I had already gotten my bachelor's degree in speech pathology, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do. So I started out as a para and then went through the alt-cert program. And after doing that, I was able to get a special education position while doing the alt-cert program with Texas A&M Commerce. So I was able to actually get my experience while going to school, unlike our undergrads who usually go to school for 4 years and have that final student teaching position. So that helped a lot. Did that here in Keller. I have been in 5th grade, 6th grade, 7th and 8th grade. At first I was over at Bear Creek, did 5th and 6th grade, then did some middle school, 6th, 7th, 8th. So I'm familiar with transitioning those littles from elementary into that intermediate middle school atmosphere, and also transitioning our 8th graders into high school. So as you can see, I worked at KMS, then I went over to Northwest, worked at Pike, but at Northwest their situation is a little bit different. Their 5th grade is in elementary, so they only have 6th, 7th, and 8th. That's where my experience lies.
Okay, wonderful. I'm sorry, did you want water?
Sure.
Okay,
Thank you.
you're welcome. All right, so what brought you into teaching? Like, what was your motivation in wanting to get into this teaching field?
It's kind of interesting. So I got my undergrad in speech pathology, and we had to do practicum in the clinical setting. So that meant you did it in the hospital or you did it in assisted living facilities, and then you also had to do it in school. So when I did my practicum in the clinical setting, I was really not interested in that setting, and I really loved working in PPCD. That's what they called it back then. Now it's like early childhood. So when I worked with the kids in small groups and was able to push them into regular pre-K setting and seeing them grow, that's where my love for teaching started. And since then, I've always loved to see that spark, like when things click, especially for our students who are special in different ways.
Yeah, I think
Those wins are a little sweeter, aren't they?
Mm-hmm.
yeah, definitely. That's the biggest reward, I think, is seeing those kids, individual kids, just succeed and progress and build that confidence. All right, so why do you feel like you would be the best fit for this role in this behavior support position?
I think my experience in 5th grade through 8th grade in this campus has those 4 grade levels would lend itself very well to being able to bring my love for the littles as they grow and see them grow from 5th graders to 8th graders. And also add that support to those teachers who might struggle with having students of special needs in their classes. Just knowing that they have someone there who's experienced it as well. There was a time when I co-taught with a gen ed teacher, so I was able to offer that support with those teachers who might have not ordinarily had special ed students, especially those with behavioral needs. And I think being able to bring that to the table would be really helpful for them and for you guys.
Okay.
Definitely, I mean, it's difficult to have a curriculum that meets both needs, you know? So there is definitely a need for accommodations. And you're right, it makes me smile because when you're talking about the 5th through the 8th, there's such a big behavioral change and growth, but I'm not sure that they don't leave at the same, you know, emotional level as they come.
No, for sure.
Yeah.
It's almost like they do
They
almost
revert, I know, they revert themselves, yeah.
Isn't it?
It's a cycle.
Yeah.
Okay, so being in this position, there's a lot of technology that is used in IEP writing and whatnot. So what are some computer applications that you're comfortable with?
I'm Google savvy. Been able to go through those courses where you get Google certified. But I know recently here in Keller you transitioned to Microsoft, so I'm also familiar with that. And as far as taking data, spreadsheets are my thing. I like to keep organized that way so that I'm able to just add to and not have to carry around binders everywhere. I also am familiar with the use of Frontline, so doing our PLAFs, working on our goals, being able to send out our progress reports. So that's something that I'm familiar with.
All right. That's, you know, we still use Frontline, so I'm glad to hear that you're familiar with that, because that's a whole training piece, you know, that takes time and takes time to get really good and familiar with it. So very nice, very good. So is there any other assignments, job assignments that you would be willing to do that you have an interest in outside of school? So clubs, NJHS, student council, anything like that, coaching? Yeah.
Not so much for the coaching, unless it's chess, something like that, which I found that our AU students, they seem to really like that because it uses a different part of their brain.
Absolutely.
And they're not ordinarily asked to be part of any organization. I also like the dichotomy of people think that when you are working with SPED students that they're low, but really they're not, they're high. So being able to support those students in a club like NJHS, where some of our students who might ordinarily be that behavior issue, but they're really high performing students, being able to support them in that atmosphere, I think that would be helpful.
Okay. So your experience is majority AU. Your students that might be in this role are going to have a very diverse set of needs. So some are going to have just emotional disorders. Some will have, you know, ADHD with impulsivity issues, anger management, some learning disabilities. So how equipped or what experience do you have with those needs?
I honestly have to say that those years that I co-taught, those gave me the most, I guess, skills necessary to deal with students who are all over the board, as far as those students who might just need help with small group, and they might have a reading disability, and I help them with that, or students who are volatile. I was able to see that in the gen ed classroom, being a co-teacher, and being able to intervene with those students and de-escalate when they were starting to amp up and perhaps cause a disruption or be able to spiral and get them to that safe space. So that's where I would be able to add my expertise.
All right, wonderful.
What were some of your strategies in doing that?
We worked out a take a break system where the students had in their in their ID badge lanyard, I added a little plastic holder, and on the back, if they needed to take a break, they would flip it, and the teacher, the gen ed teacher, and I would know that they needed a way to be able to calm themselves. Sometimes they would go to a calming corner if it was a small enough class where there was a beanbag chair, or something like that. Like in my classroom, we had that. I had the beanbag chair, I also had a weighted blanket, so they had me sometimes for advisory, and if they had to just reset, that's where they went. If I was in the classroom, they'd flip it over, and we had a signal. One was they just needed to get up and take a walk. 2 meant that they needed to take a walk with me. 3 meant that they needed to sit out, and we probably would go to another classroom where it was a designated area for that class period, where we could talk about what was going on. It seemed to help.
I like that strategy, with the flipping of the lanyard,
Mhm.
because it's not real noticeable, it doesn't require verbal conversation in the classroom,
Mhm.
doesn't really draw attention to them.
Mhm.
That's a really good strategy.
Thanks.
What do you do with students who, if you've had experience with this, if not, what would you do? With students who take advantage of that system because they prefer to be out of the class versus in the class?
I also use PBIS strategies. So I give them a max. Like, this is the maximum number of times, and it's set from the beginning of the year, where they can use it per 3 weeks. Because I know that each week they might have something different go on. We might start out with a higher number depending on their needs, and then just pull back, add 2. I have a card, it's a hole punch card, where they use it, and if they don't have as many holes punched, then they can get a reward. It might be something tangible, it might be something where they choose to play a game on my iPad, something that they've chosen to work toward, so that they have those compensatory strategies and they're not relying on that break. Especially the older they get, they're gonna need that classroom time. And the more we let them take advantage of that, they're losing that instruction. And in high school, they might not have that opportunity.
Agreed.
Yeah, I think that's wonderful. Based on their needs, making it individualized, but at the same time challenging them to use those taught self-managing techniques. So perfect. So what are your long-term goals?
I would like to get a position in curriculum instruction. Given the special ed background, I think it would be important to add support to those gen ed teachers who are not necessarily knowing how to use what they already know to support the students who are special ed, whether they are in STAC or in core, or they have maybe 1 or 2 goals that are just for speech. It's just hard sometimes for a gen ed teacher to wrap their mind around how to accommodate their students, how to take data, how to submit data, what they're looking for. So I think it would be important to add that aspect.
Seems like every year we're trying to do that better. We have yet to come up with a system that works for everyone, but we keep trying.
Yeah,
That's
keep
the good
growing.
part, yeah.
Keep growing, keep learning. One day we may figure it out.
Okay.
All right, so we're gonna kind of ask some situational questions here. So describe a time when you were faced with an organizational obstacle. How do you solve the problem? So as we know, you're gonna have several students with their own schedules, and some self-contained, some maybe not. And so there's gonna be some hiccups there. So what is an obstacle that you have faced in the past?
I think it's providing adequate support to meet their minutes. Sometimes we're short-staffed, and a teacher might have to push in, whereas you might have inclusion paras to be able to do that, but you might be waiting on someone to be hired. So to make sure that you meet those needs of those students, I feel like I have to be very careful about being very intentional in where I spend my time. It can get tricky when you're pulled especially for a behavior issue. But to know where to make up those minutes is important. At onset, I said that I like to use spreadsheets, but I also like to use the whiteboard, and I have magnets where at the beginning of the year, kind of like how you have built the master schedule, where I kind of move students and their times and their classes around, and then as the year goes on, I cover it, or I'll take it down, take a picture. And then if we need to move people to support, or I have to change my own schedule to support them, we'll do that. I think that's the hardest part, being able to make sure you meet those minutes, since
Yeah.
it's the paperwork.
I'm a very visual learner though too, so
Mhm.
I would have to, I like your puzzle strategy
Mhm.
of putting that together.
Okay, so how would your past students describe your teaching style?
I think they would say that I'm firm yet gentle, that I have structure, that I set those expectations at the beginning, and so they're not quite sure what they can get away with. And as the year goes on, they realize that I'm just trying to be their best champion, like their best, cheerleader. I've had several come back and say, well, now I know why you did such and such, especially if they've transitioned to high school, and if they transition to a high school that's not our feeder pattern, then
Right.
they know that things are a little bit different. So I think that's what it's like.
It's definitely a tricky balance to be firm and supportive at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right, so how do you manage your time efficiently?
I use my alarm on my phone.
Thank God, right?
Right.
Thank God we have those alarms now.
Yes. If back in the olden days, I would have something on my badge that would just tell me my schedule. I would zoom in on a schedule, crop it, and put it on the back. And then I would keep a spiral, and that spiral is for everything all day long. I take notes so that it's a running record of everything that I do, interactions that I have with teachers, interactions that I have with kids. And I also have a note-taking system that's my own shorthand, so I know what it stands for, especially if it's left and someone sees it, because we know that that's a record that can be called. So I like that, because sometimes our technology, especially if we have a day like today where it might rain, it might not work for us, and I still have to provide services to students, so I will carry that around. Since we have 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th, I would have a different color spiral for each grade level, and then I put it in a binder, and that would be my go-to, so that I'm not carrying, as I said before, multiple binders for all students. But in that, I would also have information about accommodations and what specific goals we're working on, things of that nature.
Okay. So what would you say the most important quality is for a teacher in this position?
I feel flexibility and patience. I think those go hand in hand. You know that you can be pulled at any time to do pretty much anything. And also know that it might not be an immediate outcome that you're looking for. It might not happen right away. You have to work and work and work at it. And just be ready for that moment of clarity to happen with the student, or if you have to work with a teacher, that aha moment to happen.
Flexibility is very important.
Okay, so I'm assuming you've been through CPI certification. So a student with emotional behavioral needs went from the triggered stage to the accelerated stage, where a student is walking around the room and he's not responding to your redirection. How would you de-escalate the child in this situation, using the escalation cycle?
Let's see. I'm thinking of an example because I know I've had one. what worked for this student that went from triggered to accelerated really quickly was, it was during it was during stations. He was unable to get his needs met in his small group. So I watched him get up and I followed him with my eyes, and when he made his way towards me, he tried to make a beeline away, but we met, our eyes met, and I walked with him. And we went through that 1, 2, 3. It's like, oh, I noticed that you're having a really hard time today. What's going on there? Do you have your tab? And he's like, yes. Okay. Are we needing to do a 1, 2, or 3? Yes. Okay. I understand it's kind of hard because we're in stations and you don't want everybody to know, but it's important for you and I to be on the same page so I know that your needs are being met. And with that being said, he went off and did his circle again because he likes to do the walking thing when he accelerates. He came back and he was like, I need a 1. I was like, okay. But we have this agreement that when he goes out of the classroom, he has exactly 3 minutes. I put a timer on. And I'm like, if you have to go to the restroom, get a drink, take a lap, you have your take a break pass. I'm setting the timer. Are you ready to go? Yes. He took off. Timer went off, and he took a 3-minute break. He came in at about the time that it came in, and he came back to me and he was like, I'm better, but I think later, because I had him for advisory, can we talk in my calm spot? And I was like, yeah, sure. And he knows that I carry my journal with me and I write it down, so he feels like his needs have been met, that I've actually put time in my schedule to be able to just solely focus on him. He is aware that when we are with the bigger class, although I'm in a co-teach situation, that it might be harder for him to be able to be heard.
So what do you think you would do if you were the only one in the room working with these students in a small group and he was non-compliant in responding? So you ask him about the 1, 2, 3 and he continues to walk and he's not responsive. So what would you do next?
I would, this has happened as well, get my students who are in the small group on an independent task where we've already gone through brief instruction, I've modeled, say, okay, it's your turn, show me what you know. I'm gonna go check in with our other students and I will approach him and pretty much do the same thing. It's one of those things where I have to make it a point in my small group to let these students know that what they're doing is not for anything, but also make sure that he knows that we're still expecting for there to be that structure. If he doesn't comply, then I offer the 1, 2, 3, and I am gonna give him the choice. Because I can't walk with you. I said you either have a 1 or you have a 3. And if you're not able to comply on your own, we're gonna have to do a 3 in your designated space, but it's gonna have to be with someone else, probably an administrator, because no other teacher's available, and we know what that's like. And usually that's that, because then they know they're gonna have to make a phone call to mom, it might be a big deal, this is not really a big deal, this is just something that I need to think about. So it gives them some perspective, and then they decide. It might take a little bit. I'll say, you know, I'm gonna let you think about it, I have to go check on these kids, I'll be right back. Or when you make your round to me, let me know. So that's how we do that.
Okay. So at times your job can be physically demanding,
Mhm.
right? Can you perform this job's essential functions with or without reasonable accommodations?
Yeah, as far as I know.
Okay.
Mhm.
So in a situation where a student has escalated and is out of control,
Mhm.
you've called in a crisis team, and so where do you see your role within that crisis team whenever you have one of your students acting out?
I feel that since I know the student the best, that mine is basically being like, as I call it, the talk therapist, talking them through, not laying my hands on him necessarily, because I feel that once that happens, we've broken that trust. But we have that understanding of, we need to talk through what's going on, bud, or girl, or whoever it is. Tell me, what are you thinking? What are our choices? We have this and this that we can do. Which one is probably gonna be in your best interest? We might have to go in circles for a while. They might throw things, but I feel that if I'm that consistently calm person, that they'll respond better than having to call in the crisis team and everyone just automatically going into a hold and the adults in the room escalating with the child. I feel like I get more reciprocity that way.
We have some, and follow up with that, we have several students who will take that standoff all day long without responding, you know, they'll just wait it out.
Mm-hmm. I had a student like that last year, a 5th grader, and he would be fine. His first block was math and science, and he would do small writing tasks. He was really good at math, so that was his, yeah, that was his first block of the day. But as he went into ELA and he had to write, then he'd go into a standoff. So we would have to take him into we had a quad little area, and just remind him that writing is not always writing with a pencil and paper. But now that we have technology, he loves to talk and tell his stories, that he could do
Voice to text.
voice to text, and he's not understanding. He would get stuck on the fact that he was not writing and that he would get in trouble, and you know, he'd start to spiral. And once he went to recess, he would be a brand new kiddo. We'd come back and he'd try it for about 10 minutes, and then he'd go back to but I'm not writing it like other kids. So I've seen that, and we just have to treat it like every time that I newly engage with a student is just brand new. Clean the slate.
Right.
And
Very important.
You have to have like the memory of an app. You really do. You can't hold on to it.
No.
Every day's a new day.
Right.
All right, so this position requires a cohesive staff to support your high needs children in your program. Tell me about a time when you had a difficult conversation with someone to avoid future issues.
I actually had to have one last year with a teacher who would give in to the student when the same student, when he would shut down, he would take time out of his instruction to give in to the student's needs, and then the student would take advantage of that. It seemed to be almost a daily thing, and I had to have a conversation with the teacher about using strategies that I use that would help him gain more functional independence, because as a 5th grader, he's needing to learn how to hold it together and use those strategies when he goes to 6th grade. We're not going to be able to follow him in 6th grade. His teachers are not going to be able to take that time out. So I would start off with, I wonder what would happen if, and give kind of advice that way. And if I noticed that it was happening again after spring break or after a 4-day weekend with the teacher and the student, then I'd have to have those conversations again. And they went over pretty well, especially when I would say, you know, if you would like for me to come in and do some modeling for you, that I really don't mind that. I can rearrange my schedule, figure out how to meet minutes at a different time. And he took advantage of that also. So
Good.
Yeah, that is great.
Sounds like he was opening to learning. That's really,
that was helpful.
yes.
Well, and your approach is non-judgmental. That it's not like you're doing this wrong. You know, it's, you know, I'm on your team. We're working together here. I wonder what would happen. I mean, that's very personable. It's very personable. All right. Well, tell me about a time when someone approached you about something they felt you needed to improve. How did you respond?
I responded with not a, no I don't, because you know that totally ruins it all. But with a, I didn't realize I was doing that, and tell me how I can improve that. How can I make it better? And if it was something like, let's say, team related, whereas the person felt that I was not doing my part, I just was like, tell me what it is that you need for me to do and I'll do it. If we can open the lines of communication so that it's not defensive and that it's just, I'm here, I'm a sponge, just tell me what it is. And then have the other person feel like what they've said is important all the time, not just in that moment, then I feel like that's a big help.
All right. Okay, so a student on your caseload has an annual ARD meeting approaching. What is the process you're familiar with to gather all the needed information and start writing the IEP?
I really liked how we used to use the Google Forms. That really helped a lot. Now, I'm not sure with the integration of Microsoft how that's done since we're using Google and Northwest, but a spreadsheet with their goals and information and questions, I feel like that would help because you can lock certain parts of the spreadsheet, or you can only share whatever part, and then you can integrate that with the rest of your data that you're needing to create your PLAF. I like to keep a bank of goals so that I'm not constantly reinventing the wheel, and I can just tweak them as needed per student. I also, in preparing, I keep a template of what I need to write, just so that saves time, and I just adjust as we're getting closer to the ARD. But as far as collecting the data from the teachers, I feel that if I work, because we do the 9-week system, if I work with the teachers and do reminders every 3 weeks, I start with an email, just reminding you that it's a 3-week period. It's a great time for us to make sure that we have updated our goals for our students, so it's not a huge task at the end, then that works. And if it's a spreadsheet, I can see if they're adding to it. If I see that they're not, then I'll have a one-on-one conversation. And sometimes I'll talk with the team as like maybe their ELA team or the science team or whatever, and I'll say, do you mind if I pop in for just a few minutes during your PLC just to talk about things that are coming up, give a reminder, that kind of thing, and that seems to help me stay organized, and then it helps the teachers, because I know they have a lot on their plate.
They do, but 3 weeks is a good time also, because we have the 3-6-9. It's a good, so they're not trying to recreate the wheel at 9 weeks.
Yes.
You know, and it gives them enough time to get more data.
All right, so when you're having difficulty with a staff member who's not getting your required data, So you discussed how you have the system of emails and Google Forms and popping into PLCs. Have you had a situation where a teacher just wasn't doing their end, they weren't collecting the data, or how did you handle that situation?
Had a couple of situations like that, and first I would kind of pick their brain about what's going on with them. It seems like it could be a couple of factors. One, they're not sure what they're needing to gather. And a lot of times you're given this information and you have so many other things that you're given at the same time. You're like, okay, I'll do it, but you're not really taking in what the goals are that are needing to be met for that student. Having that talk with the teacher about, okay, how can I support you? Is there something that maybe I could help you understand? Because I know that everything is coming at you all at once. If the teacher just brushes me off, then I'll go to their IC and pick their brain about what is the best way you think that I could approach this teacher about gathering the data. What are your ideas? See if we could hit it that way. I don't like to go directly to admin because I feel like it's a gotcha, and I wouldn't want somebody to do that to me. But it's more of a, let's see if we can coach her or him
Right.
into what they need to do, and perhaps it's one of those things too where they have so much on their plate that they don't realize that it's something that they're missing. And maybe asking them, is there something that I can do to help you to make this easier for you? Because I know that you have a lot going on.
Right.
Yeah, I think that contributes a lot to the kind of the culture that we have here as far as collaboration and family. And I think your approach does build that trust and that support. And I think that is a very beneficial approach to get, for everyone to get what they need. You to get what you need, them to get what they need. So wonderful. Well, do you have any questions for us?
I have one.
Okay.
For both of you, really. So you have both been at ISMS for quite some time. What is your favorite thing about being a part of the staff?
Oh my gosh, that's an easy
So
question for me.
Oh, it's
Yeah.
loaded.
No, I love that our staff, they just jump in and help. I mean, we're all serving. We're serving the children, we're serving each other, we're all similar hearted and have the same goal. So when any part is down or any part that needs help, everybody just molds in. It's like a living organism that just kind of blends in. And it's special because you're outnumbered, you are outnumbered, and the things that are being asked of you is long. And everybody has a day. Everybody has issues at home. I mean, there's always something, and I don't think people feel put upon to step in and help.
That's good to hear.
Yeah. And I would say on top of that, I completely agree with what she just said, but I would say that the staff, we have a very growth-minded staff. We are all receptive to learning and growing. We have a goal of growing our kids.
Right.
And but we have the motivation to reach the kids where they're at and give them what they need. And so we have a staff of risk takers that they're willing to try new things. And I think just that attitude of working together, collaboration, but then also the willingness to change and grow, and that it's okay to make mistakes because you have that support.
Right.
I think that's one of the big areas that just makes Indian Springs just the place to be. So
It's a special place, I think.
well, thank you so much for your time.
Of course.
We will definitely be in touch.
It was great
Appreciate
meeting
it.
you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And if there's anything else that any other questions that you may have, just shoot me an email.
I will.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Have
right.
a great afternoon.
You too.